overview of asynchronous apex what is. Today we will see what are the different ways of invoking asynchronous apex. Asynchronous apex means apex that gets invoked in the background and asynchronously. That gets executed asynchronously. Okay. So the first way of invoking asynchronous apex is by defining a future method. Like, what's a future method? Yes, sir. Okay, so the first type of asynchronous apex is a future method. Alright, so what is a future method? Future method is a method that runs in the background asynchronously. Alright, now you can call a future method for executing long running operations. So future method is something which gets executed in the background asynchronously when the resources become available. So the difference between a normal method and a future method is a normal method, when it is called, the method gets executed that point of time. A future method is which gets executed in future. So if you call the method now, it might get executed now or it might get executed in the future. Okay. Now who will decide whether it will get executed now or in future? That future method checks for the resource availability. It will check whether the resources are available for that method to get executed or not. Right? If the resources are available, then it will get executed. If not, then it gets in the queue. It gets into the apex job queue and it waits for the resources to become available. Whenever the resources become available, it gets executed. So usually it is defined for long running operations, right? Or any operation you would like to run in its own thread on its own time. So any particular operation that you want to run on its own thread on its own time, right? So when the user calls it, this method can get executed at a later point of time whenever the resources become available on its own. Got it? So that's a good thing about a future method. In a normal method, if the method tries to get executed and if it does not find the resources, it gets cancelled. But for future method, if the resources are not available, it gets in the queue and waits for the resources to become available. Got it? Each future method is queued and executes when system resources become available. To define a future method, all that you have to do is you just have to annotate a method with this add future annotation. That's it. Okay. Before the start of the method, you have to just make it add future method. Okay. That makes it a future method. Alright. So the difference between a normal method and future method, as I told you, a normal method will either get executed synchronously, which means in sync with when it is called. Either it gets executed then it's then and there, or it does not get executed at all. But a future method, if it is not able to execute at the time when it was called, it can get executed at a later point of time. All right. Now, methods with a future annotation must be static methods and can only return a void type. So the methods with a future annotation should be void methods and they should be static methods. Okay. So only a static void method can be defined as a future method. And the parameter, if you have to specify any particular parameter into that method, that parameter has to be primitive data type, array of primitive data type, or collection of primitive data type. Nothing else apart from that. Okay, so it cannot take an S object as a parameter. It can only take the primitives as parameters. Got it? Now, the methods with the future annotation cannot take S objects or objects as arguments, and the reason is pretty simple. Why it does not take S object as an argument? S object means what? Records, right? Why it doesn't take S object as a parameter? The reason is pretty simple. Because the future method, in case of a future method, the actual execution can get delayed, right? So when the method is called and when it is actually executed, there can be a time difference between these two activities, right? So in that case, if S object is taken as a parameter, there is a possibility that the value in the S object changes between the time when it was actually called and when it gets executed. Okay, so in that case there will be a problem. Got it? So for that reason, only primitives can be supplied as parameter. S object cannot be supplied as a parameter for the future method. S object might change between, okay, the reason why S object cannot be used as passed as an argument to future method is S object might change between the time you call the method and the time it executes. In this case, the future method will get the old S object value and might override them. Got it? So that's basically about the future method. So in a future method, you cannot define an S object as a parameter. All right. So that's a restriction with the future method. Now, in case you have to work with the records with a future method, all that you have to do is pass the S object ID instead of the S object itself as a parameter. Okay. So let's say if you are defining a future method, let's say at future public static void m1. Okay, and for this method you have to pass some argument. You want this method to get executed on a list of accounts, right? So this is wrong. This is wrong. Why it is wrong? Because you cannot pass S object as an argument to a future method. Got it? This cannot be done. Why? Because the value of the records can change between the time when it was called and when it actually gets executed. So if I have to work with a future method for a list of accounts, then what will I do? This is incorrect. So what is the correct way of using it? In future method, as I told you, we can only use primitives as parameters. So you should instead use the IDs of these accounts. Instead of using list of account, you could say list of ID, AID, whatever. Okay, and inside the method you can have list of account equals select name from account where ID in AID. Got it? So I'm passing list of ID. ID is a primitive data type, so I'm passing the list of IDs as parameter, and inside the method I am doing a query to fetch the values. So you can still manage to work on list of accounts, but ID should not be passed as parameter. Sorry, the account should not be passed as parameter. ID should be passed as the parameter, and inside the future method, you should be doing a list of account or whatever query, and then you should work on this. Okay, so that is a way of working on the future method. So that's how you actually deal with this. All right. A good thing about the ID is why I am able to supply the ID, because ID does not change for a record. Why I am not supplying S object as a parameter for a future method, because we are saying that the time when it is called and the time when it gets executed, the data can get changed in the S object. But ID will not get changed. For any record, ID has to be constant. I mean, that remains constant till the time the record is deleted. Other values can change, but no one can actually go and change the ID of the record. So that's the reason why ID, which is a primitive also, that can be defined as an argument for a future method. So same thing. Okay. But this future method is, slightly outdated way of writing this asynchronous effects, and we don't use it that much. Okay. I wanted you to understand, because there are certain restrictions also with this. It has to be, it has to be, sorry, only the parameter which can be passed is a primitive data type and all. So it's not that much used nowadays. There's a better thing that Salesforce has come up with, which is a queuable apex. All right, which is an enhanced way of the future method. Okay, which is queuable apex. What is queuable apex? Queuable apex is, something which allows you to write asynchronous apex process by using the queuable interface. All right, so this is more of a class. Future method was a method. Queuable apex is a class. Okay, you can define a class and you can execute that class, which can run in future. Okay, the future again means the same logic when the resources become available. All right, if the resources are not available, queuable apex will not get executed. It will wait for its turn, and it will wait for the resources to become available. Once the resources are available, it gets executed. All right. This interface enables you to add jobs to the queue and monitor them, which is an enhanced way of running your asynchronous apex code compared to using future methods. So this is an enhanced way as compared to the future method. You see, compared to using future method. This queuable apex is an enhanced way. Alright. So nowadays we mostly use queuable apex. So this queuable interface allows you to put your apex job in a queue, job queue, and in that job queue it gets executed whenever the resources become available. For apex processes that run for a long time, such as extensive database operation, you can run them asynchronously by implementing the queuable interface and adding a job to the apex job queue. So any long running operation can be added into the job queue using the queuable apex. Alright. In this way, your asynchronous apex job runs in the background in its own thread and doesn't delay the execution of your main apex logic. So the advantage of using queuable apex is it does not delay the main apex logic, the synchronous logics, the triggers, and the page, the apex which is being called from the Visual Force pages. Those are the main apex logics because they need to get executed instantly. If a trigger is working, if a record is being being saved, and if you have written a before trigger, that before trigger should work instantly, right? You cannot expect that before trigger to wait for 2 hours and then get executed. So that logic is the main apex logic that cannot wait. If someone is trying to load a page, so if there is a person who is trying to load a page, so that is the main apex logic, right? Because that person will definitely not wait asynchronously that okay fine, this page can open in future whenever it gets resources. That, so those are main logics, those are synchronous apex, and those are main logics. Okay, so queuable apex basically makes room for the main logic to run first and waits for the resources to become available. When the resources are available, then it gets executed, right? So any long running operation should not hamper performance of other main Apex running for your org, right? So that is the basic concept here. So in this way, your asynchronous Apex job runs in the background in its own thread and doesn't delay the execution of your main Apex logic. So it does not affect the performance of your main Apex logic, right? Each queued job runs when system resources become available. Same concept, right? So I'll talk about the benefits of using queuable Apex, but before that, let me just give you an idea how a queuable Apex is written. So for writing queuable Apex, as I told you, this is a class basically. So you just have to define the class, give a name to the class, whatever you want to, and here you have to use an queuable interface. So you have to say implements queuable. Okay, implementing this queuable interface, this makes the class queuable, which means this class can be queued in the Apex job queue. That's it. So these two words are making the difference. And inside this class, you just need to have one method which will be execute. Public void execute. This has to be a void method, which means it will not return anything. And the name of the method has to be execute. Okay, the name has to be execute only. You cannot have any other name. Now your code here. Whatever coding you want to do, that should come here. So that's how a queuable Apex can be created. So this is how simple it is. Very, very simple. Okay. Now whatever code you want to execute, that needs to be written here. But overall syntax is this. Correct? Now, how is a queuable Apex better than a future method? We just talked about this, that this is an enhanced way of writing future methods. So instead of future method, now we have started using queuable Apex. Why is queuable Apex better than the future method? So queuable jobs are similar to future methods in the way that they are both queued for execution. So both of them, ultimately do the same thing. They get in the queue and they wait for the resources to become available so that they can get executed, right? But they are different in a way that queuable Apex, provides you a few additional functionalities which you do not have with the future method. So queuable Apex provide you with these additional benefits. The first benefit of a queuable Apex is that it gives you an ID of the job that is going to get executed, right? So when you put a queuable Apex into the job queue, it gives you an ID. With the help of that ID, you can track the status of that particular job. So if I tell you that this job is in the queue, you might want to understand that, okay, fine, is it still in the queue? Let's say after 2 hours, you just want to check whether that got executed or is it still pending in the queue, right? So that is possible in queuable Apex, because in queuable Apex you get the job ID. Getting an ID for your job. When you submit your job by invoking the system.enqueue job method, just forget about the system.enqueue job method. This is something which you will see a little later. So basically, whenever you put that queuable Apex into the job queue, the method returns the ID of the new job. So every new job will have an ID. What is the advantage with that ID? The advantage with that ID is that you will be able to track the progress of the job. You can use this ID to identify your job and monitor its progress. So whether the job has got executed or is it still pending in the queue, that you can understand. This benefit you do not have with the future method. Future method does not give you any ID. You've called the future method and after that you have no means of tracking what actually happened to that future method. Is it still in the queue or has it got executed? You cannot figure it out. So that's a disadvantage of future method and that's an advantage of queuable Apex. You get an ID, you can easily track what is the status. Is it still in the queue or it has got executed, right? So definitely a useful feature, monitoring the progress. Secondly, in queuable Apex, you can use non-primitive data types also as parameters. Fine, because it's a class, it's not just a method. So you can define non-primitives also inside it. Non-primitives means basically S objects. Yeah. So because it's a class, so you can define your list of account here or whatever, list of any S object or whatever, and you can pass that as parameter into the method. So that should not be a problem. Got it? Yeah. Yeah. You can use non-primitive. So your queuable class can contain member variables of non-primitive data types such as object or custom apex types. Those objects can be accessed when the job executes. So in that execute method, you can access those primitives. Sorry, those S object variables. Got it? So that's the second advantage. Third advantage, queuable apex allows you the process of chaining jobs. Chaining jobs means if you have a requirement that when this job completes, start the second job. Let's say if you have three jobs to be done, job 1, job 2, job 3. Job 1 is basically to update the phone number of all the accounts. Job 2 is to update the facts. Job 3 is to update the website. Let's say. And you want to make sure that the updation of facts happens only after all the phone numbers are updated. Facts get updated only after the phone numbers are updated. So in that case, you can actually do a chaining job. Chaining job means after job 1, you can just hook the second job to the first one. So end of first job will start the second job. That can be done. Okay. You can chain one job to another job by starting a second job from a running job. Okay. Chaining job is useful if you need to do some processing that depends on another process to have run first. Got it? So let's say I have one queuable class or queuable apex and I have another one. Okay, this also has a code. I want this to run first and then I want the second one to run. Okay, so what I can do, I can do a chaining. So in chaining, what you should do after writing all the code of your first class, first method, you should end of the code, you should call the second queuable class. Got it? How to call it that we are gonna see, but you should call the second queuable class here. So the moment the execution of the first part of the code is done, it will automatically call the second one. Now the second one gets started. In the second one, you can call the, if there is a third queuable apex. So this way you can actually chain multiple jobs. Okay, so this is again one advantage of a queuable apex. Got it? Now let's do a small example of a queuable apex. Let me write queuable apex. Give me 1 minute. Let me log in into salesforce.com. Okay, so for queuable apex, you again need to write the class exactly the way you have written it earlier. All that you have to do is go to the setup, develop apex classes, click on new, public, class, whatever name of the class you want to give it. There are two things that you have to keep in mind while you are creating a queuable class. One, you have to implement the queuable interface here. Okay, so these two words are very important here. And secondly, you just need to have one method here, which name of that method should be execute and the return type should be void. Public void execute. That's it. You have to be a little cautious with the spelling of queuable. You make a lot of mistake in that. But so if you have, if you remember this much as a syntax, that's it. That's all that you need to do. Out of this entire 4 lines, only this class name is something that you have to change every time. The rest everything we can remain same, exactly the same. Execute. Method name will not change. It has to be executed. It will be a void method. It has to be a public void method. That's it. Now, whatever code you want to execute, put in the queue, that you can write here. So, for time being, let me say
Okay.
count A equals new account name equals uh,
Hello.
account. Yeah. Hello.
Okay.
Hello. Yeah.
Ajit, one question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did syntax wise means understood that public void means execute return type will be void only.
Mm-hmm.
Can we means understand it as a concept wise that why it is always void only?
Why is it void only? So what is a void method?
It doesn't return anything.
Does not return anything, right?
Yes.
So a queuable apex is what? Which will get in the queue and it will get executed asynchronously, right?
Yes.
Future. That future can be after 30 minutes, after 1 hour. Okay. Now this kind of a method, do you think that this kind of a method can be used for returning anything? A return method
Yes.
where we can use that for when a page is getting loaded or something like that, right? There we need to
Mm-hmm.
return some value. Asynchronous apex should not return anything because you cannot make someone wait for some value will be returned and then the page will get loaded and stuff like that. That will not happen, right? So any asynchronous apex has to be void only. I should no, the other person should not be waiting for a return to come from that particular method. It should just be a piece of code which should get executed and there is no return thing. Got it?
Yes.
So anything which is asynchronous, including your uh, future method, queuable apex, scheduler, batch apex, all these will be return type void. Got it? All these have to be void methods because they should not return anything. Logically, got my point now? So something which is
Yes. Yes.
executing, today I'm calling, tomorrow it is executing. So I'm not definitely not looking to get any return out of that or a return value
Mm-hmm.
out of that. Got it?
Yes. Got it.
So let's say now this is the code that I want to execute, and this could have been a long operation also. Instead of one account, I could have had let's say 1,000 account or whatever. So let's say this is an operation that I want to execute, and I want to put it in the Apex job queue. I don't want this operation. So you will put any particular code in queuable Apex when you think that that operation is going to be a long running operation and you don't want that particular Apex code to hamper your main Apex logic. That's what we understand by now, right? So this is the code that I've written. Now how do I put it in the job queue? All that you have to do is you just have to put this class in the job queue. For that you just need another method which is called system.enqueue. So you have to write one line of code, id job id equals system dot enqueue job new queue class. This is what you have to write. Okay, as I told you, once you call the queue, or once you put the queuable class into the into the job queue, it returns an ID. Okay, so it will give you a job ID. Now this line of code you can write anywhere. Let's write it in the anonymous code block that we saw the other day in the developer console. So this line of code will put this class into the Apex job queue. So I can go to anonymous window. Okay, execute. Line number one, there is another system.enqueue job enqueue class. Good. Okay. So this line of code, when gets executed, it puts that Apex class in the job queue. Okay. How will you find it? Where will you track the progress of that job? You just have to go to setup, under monitor, go to jobs, and go to Apex jobs. See, queuable jobs completed. This is the Apex job ID for that. There's a class. Okay, status is completed. So now, because there is no one working on the same org, so that's the reason why it just got completed, and the operation that we had was very small, right? So if it was pending, if it was still queued, it would have shown status as queued. Let me see if the account got created. What was the name of the account that we gave? Account. So this is the one which got created just now. So it has successfully completed. Yeah, just got created 8:19 p.m. 8th October. So that's correct. Correct. So all that you need to do is you just need to write this one line in your developer console to call it, right? Now, as I was talking about chaining of job, so if you have to call another class, another query class from class 1, then this line for the second class should be written here. So then what will happen? The first one gets executed, and towards the end it calls the second one also. When the first one gets executed, then it calls the second one. If you put both of them into job queue separately, then what will happen? The second one might get executed before the first one. Got it? So that's the problem. So if you put it into the like a chain, if you call the second one from the first job class, then what will happen? You can ensure that the second one executes only once the first one has got executed. Got it? So that's the advantage. All right. So are we clear on this? Let me know if there is any doubt or question. Very simple concept. Any code that you just don't want to execute right away, you think that execution of that code can be done in the background whenever the resources become available. Put it in a queuable Apex. Syntax I've shown. Write your code and put it in the job queue using that one line system.enqueue job method. That's it. And that gets into the job queue. And how do you monitor it? You can monitor it from the setup, monitor, jobs. Under that you can go and check Apex jobs. Clear? That's one. Now, there is one more thing which is called an Apex scheduler. Okay, now we have talked about queuable Apex, but queuable Apex is for things which you just want to do one time, and you will just go and call that method once, and that will system.enqueue job will put the queuable Apex in the job queue. Fine, but it's going to be one time thing. What if you have a code? If you have a code that you want to execute every Friday, got it? You have a piece of code that you want to execute every Friday, or let's say on first of every month. So in that case, you need an Apex scheduler. All right. It's also very similar to queuable Apex. All that you have to do is you have to implement a schedulable interface. So for this, concept wise, the entire thing is same. This is also asynchronous Apex. This will also give priority to the main Apex logic. This will also wait for the turn to come. And the only difference between a queuable Apex and an Apex scheduler is Apex scheduler is for repeat operations. So if you think some Apex code needs to be executed every Friday, first of every month, that sort of thing, then you should use Apex scheduler. All right. One-off activity should be queuable Apex. Got it? Rest everything remains same. So for writing an Apex scheduler, all that you have to do is you have to implement schedulable interface. Okay, so instead of queuable interface there, here you are implementing schedulable interface. This will also be a void method. Name of the method will be execute exactly the way it was there, and your code comes here. That's it. So let's write a schedulable Apex. Class. We'll go to Apex classes. Go to new. Public class as class implements schedulable public void execute schedulable context. That's it. Everything is syntax. All that you need to do is you just need to go ahead and write your code here. Let's say count a equals equals ABCD. That's it. Okay, now this piece of code, this method will get executed on the defined frequency. Where will you define this frequency? Because this is not one-time activity, so in this case you don't need to call this method one time. All that you have to do is you just have to define the schedule for this class to run. To define the schedule for this class is ready. Just go to Apex classes. There you will see an option of schedule Apex. Where you see the list of classes, there is an option of schedule Apex. You click on this, give it a job name, whatever. Select the Apex class that you want to schedule. Only the classes which implement the schedulable interface, only the classes where you have said implement schedulable, Those classes will be available here for scheduling. So right now I just have one class. So weekly I want this to execute every Friday. It is similar to the way you schedule your reports. So it starts on this date from 8th of October, goes until 8th November. You can extend the date. What is the preferred start time? What time you plan to start? So the preferred start time is just your preference of the method to start. But exact start time will depend on job queue activity. Okay, so the actual execution can get delayed. Why? Because this is asynchronous effects and this will wait for resources. So at 7 p.m. I have said, but at 7 p.m. if the resources are not available, it will run after that. Right? So it's not the exact time of execution. Save it. Done. Now this code will get executed on every Friday at 7 p.m. Got it? Now how do you monitor the schedulable effects or scheduled effects? Again you have to come to the monitor jobs, go to scheduled jobs. Under scheduled jobs you will get to see this. J1 is the job name, scheduled, submitted on this date. Next scheduled run is on 9th of October 7 p.m. Okay. So the entire schedule will be there, and you can also find it under the Apex job queue. Schedule Apex, this is queued, status is queued to be executed next on 9th October. So that's how it is. Got it? So that's basically about queuable Apex and schedulable Apex. Let me know if there is any question or doubt here, any difficulty understanding this much.
Jeet,
Clear? All
Jeet,
right.
I know you.
Hello? Yep.
Uh, Jeet, I know you mentioned when the resources are available, right, that
Hmm.
these kind of get invoked or
Uh-huh.
they run.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you say that, what do you really mean in terms of what kind of resources are we looking at for them to run? And once they come to that resource, once they get it, so how many times do they run?
How many times do they run means? They will run one time only.
पहले तो मुझे वो रिसोर्स का समझ नहीं आया कि क्या वेट कर रहा है वो और फिर वो एक बार मिल जाता है तो वो एक बार रन करके फिर छोड़ देता है या फिर बार बार रन करता है.
No, that will run one time only. Why it will run multiple times?
Okay, now when you
One
say resource, what do you really mean by that?
resources means, see, because Salesforce is on a multi-tenant environment, so every
Okay,
org has been given us, certain amount of resources, right? And all your logics too should get executed within those limited resources. Fine.
okay,
So all your logic should get executed within those particular resources. Fine. Now what happens with you know an org which has multiple users working at the same time is, if you start a big running operation, then what will
mm,
happen, other operations or other Apex logics which are actually getting executed for your system at a certain point of time might get affected. Fine. There's a
okay,
big
okay,
upload which is happening. Now there is another Apex trigger which has to run for the other person. That trigger might not run because your all the allocated resource or all the allocated bandwidth to your Salesforce org has been occupied by that particular operation which is running. Got it? So for that
okay,
reason, what you
okay,
have to do is you just have to make sure that all big or long running operations are kind of made asynchronous so that they don't affect the main logics. So if there is a main logic means the synchronous one where the end user is waiting for
right,
something to happen. Right? A trigger is main
right,
logic,
right.
a page is main logic. So that's what the concept here is. Got it? So
But Jeet, is it unpredictable as to when it's going to run because we don't
yes,
know? Okay,
yes,
so
because
Jeet,
you do
I
not know.
mean, so it's like when we don't know when it's going to run, so
Hmm.
I mean, how can we depend on it in terms of the dependability? Um, Because we
See,
said
when
we
it's
want
gonna
this
run will
account to
not
be executed.
mean, see, when it's gonna run will not definitely mean that it will run after a week or so. It will definitely run,
Okay.
let's say we right now your office time is there and there are a lot of people who are working on your Salesforce on, right? 6 p.m.
Okay.
office gets over, most of the, people have already logged out. So no one is working on.
Okay.
So that's the time when it gets executed. So any
Okay.
these kind of operations usually, get done within 24 hours because there are times when no one in your company is working on Salesforce, or then the resources are available and these kind of things get executed at that point of time. So it's
Okay.
not like it will get delayed by 2 days or 3 days. I mean, theoretically we talk
Okay.
about it, but it does not happen that way. You just saw it right
Okay.
now, right? Resources were available, this got completed instantly. So the moment
Right. Right.
it gets done. When it is gonna get done, so you'll have to have, let's say, a buffer of uh, 24 hours in hand. That's the
Okay.
kind of thing that you should have in mind. Alright.
Okay, Jeet, I know probably you're getting late for your next class, but
Hmm.
Jeet, can we have some logics associated in terms of real time? When are we going to do it? I mean, I know you said, I mean, for the examples that we took today, we said add a new account, but I mean, in real world, we won't use that, right, as a logic. Um,
Yes.
so is it possible tomorrow just to kind of,
Nee, why
I
tomorrow?
think I just,
I can tell you the logics right now. If you are trying to, let's say you're trying to cleanse the
okay,
database, there are
okay, okay,
50,000 accounts and you have actually written a code which is actually going to cleanse the database. So any database
okay,
cleaning kind of activity, that sort of thing. Okay. Or if you're trying to, as I told you, you're trying to create multiple records. You want to delete all the accounts where industry is something, you just want to take them and you want to just perform a delete operation using your Apex code,
okay,
right? That sort
okay,
of thing. So any such kind of operation which is basically involving long running operation will involve more of a database, right? So either you are updating, a big chunk of the data, or you are entering, multiple records into the system, or you are deleting a lot of records and then creating something else. Fine. That sort of thing.
okay,
Let's say you decide that, okay, fine, I'll write a code. I will delete all the accounts where I do not have an opportunity. Okay, so you just want to write a code, do a query of all the records where opportunity is not there, find them and delete them. Okay, and you have, let's say, 50,000 or 100,000 accounts, and you are expecting that there can be 5,000, 10,000 accounts which need to be deleted here. So in that sort of thing you can actually put in this asynchronous effects.
okay, Jeet, now just going by the examples, I'm sure they are all real time, but now I do have an option of using a data loader, right? In terms of if I want to delete certain records because that's more predictable. So do you think in the real world we'll still use this as an option? Or, I mean, I'm just trying to understand where will I use a data loader and where will I use this?
Okay, good question. Now, if I'm talking about updating the database and if I'm talking about putting a logic into that, how
Okay,
much logic can you put in data loader? First of all, think about this. I mean, this is a question. I think you guys can come up with an answer to this. Do you really feel that a data loader is as capable as my Apex code? So if you feel that, great. But unfortunately, that's not true. Data loader is what? It's just a drag and drop
right.
option, right? Do you think data loader can be that smart and
Mm-mm-mm.
you can write and compare all the things that you can do with a Apex code? No. Can you tell a data loader that delete
Okay,
the account if
okay.
opportunity is not there? Can you tell that to the data loader? No, right?
No,
So
no.
you basically have to go and pull the list of all the accounts with opportunities, then you will find with a VLOOKUP that where opportunity is not there, right? So data loader is, like, just a cycle in front of, Apex coding where we are writing. So when we actually need to, perform those logics and with Apex scheduler again, when you want to do these activities every week,
Okay,
I
okay.
mean, there is one time activity that you have done, but if you want to do this activity every week, that every week I want all the records with no opportunity to get created, deleted, or something to be
Deleted.
done,
Okay.
deleted or created, or something to be done, escalated. So that sort of things can happen with our Apex logic. Fine. Data loader is basically not the right thing for logical. DML operations, right? Wherever I want to check
Okay.
these kind of things and all. Got it? So
Right.
that's where it is. Most of the DML operations which have logic and all those things, they will be done through Apex. I mean, you have that option of doing those things through Apex. Got
Okay.
it? Data loader is,
Okay.
basically for straightforward operations. Straightforward means where you don't have to, to use too much of logic that if this happens and if that does not happen, then do this and do that and all that stuff.
Okay. Uh, okay. Now,
Okay.
Jeet, when we say we want to insert records using Apex,
Uh-huh.
and if that records are in Excel, can we still merge both of them, or it has to just be a code that we need to write?
It just knows the code. It doesn't know the Excel.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Fine. So here basically more than creating records, what we are actually doing is we most of the times we either update the record or we create a record from one reference to the other reference point. Got it?
Okay.
So
Okay.
I mean creating record can just be one part of it, but most of the times you will not be dealing with creating of the records. Creating of the record is the straightforward thing, but dealing with the records which need to be updated, okay, or dealing with the records which need to be cleared or deleted from one object and they need to be created on other object, stuff like that.
Okay.
That's something which can be done using your Apex code. Fine.
Okay.
So there is not a concept of an Excel or something like that here.
Okay. Jeet, if it's okay, can we do one example tomorrow where we are trying to delete records and create a new, probably delete it from any of the objects and trying to create something in, I mean, just to get all these things in one place?
Okay, fine. So let's talk about that tomorrow. I think